Hello and welcome to the Rave New World Masterclass. If you are here through the Matriarchs of Design series, a very, very warm welcome to you. This is the second last in our series of 6 masterclasses that have been packaged together in Matriarchs of Design. This is probably one of the most out there topics within the human design system. And it's why I wanted to bring it into Matriarchs of Design and why I wanted to do this particular masterclass. It doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, but it is part of the storyline of human design and of where we're going. So for me, it's of relevance. For me, this storyline of human design creates so much more depth than just looking at the system through the lens of personal development. So let's dive in to the brave new world of Raves and where we are heading. I'm going to pull my slides up. Just bear with me. Okay, here we go. The Rave New World and the Future of Awareness. And this particular masterclass topic, I really wanted to address a few things, but the most important aspect to address is the rave and us, because we will be coexisting together, at least for some time. Now, Ra has not really released much material on the rave because he actually didn't find it of interest. And I've got a few quotations from him. This particular masterclass, the material that I've drawn from for this masterclass is drawn from source material, Jovian Archive, and Ra really didn't say a whole lot. His focus throughout his time of bringing the human design system to the world was humans. And of course, he received a lot of knowledge from his transmission during those 8 days with the voice, but he then packaged it in the way that he felt was appropriate to bring forth. And that was very much human focused. And that's okay. That's where he saw the most important lever, at least for his lifetime. So this is a quote from Ra. When I see the rave, I see a warning, the end of human. If you want to imagine rave, imagine everything you are not, which is actually really difficult for us to imagine. So this is kind of where prophecy meets prediction meets science fiction meets evolution. So let's dive in. Thank you for being here, because this is not a masterclass that is going to resonate or land with many folk out there. So if you're here, trust that you're here for a reason and just receive this. Pop the mind aside and just allow this to wash over you as a transmission. You obviously have the replay. Maybe you're watching the replay now, and that's great, because maybe this is just one of those experiences that you just need to experience, that you can allow yourself to experience without the mind coming in too much. Okay, what we will cover in this next kind of hour or so together, what is a rave? We're going to address significant dates, and these, in the particular case of this particular topic, 2027, 2003, and around 3300, which is around 1300 years into the future, let's say. This is through Ra's work and his prediction, but this dates now dates back 20 years ago. So sort of done a little bit of a quasi estimation. The coexistence of us and them, this conscious penta, what that is, and its potential impact and how it relates to raves, And very little we're going to touch on spirit awareness. I have addressed this in previous masterclasses, particularly those related to the solar plexus mutation and the emotional center of the solar plexus. Okay, a little bit of revision time. Let's kind of go back a little bit. And I've also already had a masterclass on this. And this is the beauty of if you are here within Matriarchs of Design, you've been able to move through this. And it's fairly sequential. It's trying to be a logical storyline, but this is a little bit of review material. If you're just here for this one-off masterclass, then we'll do a little bit of review just so we can kind of put some pieces in place. So we are currently embodying a vehicle that is 9-centered. And this has been an evolution from the 7-centered being, which relates to the very well-known Hindu Brahma system of the chakras, the 7 chakras. In the future, the next iteration will be 11 centers, but we don't get to play in that vehicle. It ends with the 9 centers for us. So Homo sapien intransitus or intransitus, this is where we are. And Ra gave this vehicle this name for a particular reason, because we are a transitory form. We are here in order to provide the biological vehicle to essentially birth the next evolution, the next species. So in 1781, when we were 7 centers, not for much longer, 3 really crucial things happened. Uranus was discovered. Uranus is that aspect that kind of turns everything on its head, literally. Projectors came into being on this earthly realm, and we went from the 9 to the 7, sorry, the 7 to the 9 centers. And this happened, it's been described as a reorganization. It's not like we had sort of discretely 2 extra centers. There was a reorganization of the vehicle to then have this 9-centered bioform. The evolutionary purpose, as I've mentioned, is to carry the vehicle that the Rave will occupy. Just let that land for a little bit. This 9-centered vehicle is on loan for us, essentially, so that we can provide the hardware that is actually for Rave. And we just get to enjoy it for 1,300 years or so. And this new species is going to be birthed by this vehicle. And this new species is Rave. So this is Ra's take on Raves. It's very interesting material to listen to. He he doesn't really particularly enjoy talking about them. He says, there's aspects of this knowledge that he just finds like so fascinating and interesting intellectually and energetically, and there's such a depth to this knowledge, and he loves the mechanics of it. He loves the simplicity, but the profound nature of the mechanics when they're all layered on top, like within each other, on top of each other, and you get the full depth of what is there. But the raves are like a completely separate side topic, which he didn't feel at all drawn to. So he describes them as everything that we are not. Like, really think about that as a human being. We are emotional. They will not be. We are very tribal, collective. They will not be. And various other aspects, which we'll go into through this series of slides. So it was not a topic of interest for Ra. He described it as, it brings a chill when I ponder this, because his work was all about the fulfillment of potential for us as humans, as I've mentioned. That was his primary focus. The rave was just a side topic. They have nothing to do with us apart from the fact that we are the mechanism by which they come into being. It's part prophecy, part science fiction, because we're not there quite yet, but it's really unfolding in the here and now. Ra in human design was all about unique self-reflected consciousness as a goal. His work and the mechanical nature of human design as he delivered it was to support individual humans into fully embodying the uniqueness of their bioform and living that out as a unique self-reflected awareness and consciousness. We're not all going to get there. Very few of us are going to get there. But that was kind of his goal and intention with the way that he brought human design to the world. This is not the goal of the program, the program being the bigger movie that we don't have any control over. We are simply either victims to or witnesses of. And he was really encouraging this movement into awareness, embodiment of your human design, to then be able to sit in witness of the movie, because you land in a place finally where it's understood that there's nothing for you to do. There's no one to save. There's nothing to control. Simply live your life as yourself. That was his underlying message. He also described us as mules. It ends with us, this bioform is this kind of donkey horse hybrid that produces a mule that doesn't go anywhere. And that's kind of, that was a descriptor that he used for us. We are mules to carry forth the rave. So the rave. I've used some imaginative decorations, illustrations here, which do decorate the slides, to sort of just give this sense of what the rave could be, because it's very hard to know for sure. None of this is for certain. These were postulations by Ra. So the solar plexus mutation is absolutely key in all of this. There will be no channel 1949, and the motor function is switched off in the solar plexus. That channel will just simply not exist. If you currently have that channel, such as myself, nothing will change. We get the full glory of living as our emotional selves, driven by that sort of really deep tribal circuitry, but it will not be expressed in the rave. The rave will have capacity, therefore, once that motor function of the solar plexus is removed, that motor function of the emotional wave, it then morphs into awareness. It becomes its potential as an awareness center. We don't really know what that fully means as humans, but raves will have access to this emotional center being an awareness center. And this has been termed spirit awareness. We've had splenic awareness, we've had ajna awareness once we gained the 9 centers, and next we'll be moving into this spirit awareness, but not us. We're sort of getting left behind at that point. So effectively, there's no emotional expression outward. There's no motor to move the expression outwards of an emotional landscape for raves, which I'll bring these 2 points together now, is very interesting. I want to be very cautious about drawing too many threads between humans and future raves in creating similarities, because the only connection is this biological reproductive capacity that we have to produce raves as we move forward. But interestingly, Ra talked extensively about mutations, solar plexus mutations, principally governing the 1949 channel, connecting the root and the solar plexus, and expressions of that as the mutation is starting to take shape, expressions of that being in the form of prostate cancer and autism. Now, the autism one is particularly interesting at the times we're living in right now, because if we look at this idea of a mutation that's going to impact emotional receptivity, awareness, and expression, this is classically what we kind of term this autism spectrum. So it's, as Ra describes it, it's like these are the mutations that didn't fully cook. Like it's kind of there, but they've come too early, sort of thing. It's like, yeah, it's like the biology is ironing out its kinks. And so we can sort of see these little hints of what we may be able to postulate is going to be rave kind of attributes. But this is not to say that autism means that these people are raves. That doesn't equal. The other interesting aspect is, our ego center is very I, whether it's defined or undefined. I am unworthy. I need to prove myself if it's undefined in the not self, or, I, know who I am. I'm in my power. I have a defined ego. Ra had a defined ego. The raves will not have this I-ness about them. It will be we, which creates a really interesting concept because as we move into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, we're moving into a profound time of individuality. But it's like the rave is going to be completely not about the individual self. So it's going to be very interesting to sort of see how this plays out. And there's no mistakes in evolution. So some characteristics physically: poor vision, transparent, like very luminous skin. And this is related to this potential for greater tactile receptivity and communication that we are not able to experience as humans, except for maybe a few very special humans that have this kind of touch cognitive capacity. Poorly developed musculature and therefore really poor mobility. So they're not going to be really super mobile beings because that's not really what they're here for. They will be incapable of living an individual life. And this is why this is so interesting that we will be coexisting with them for a time because, as human beings, we have mastered the physical plane. You might look around the world and go, well, not really, but we have. Like our whole driving force has been from the most very primitive times. It's all around survival. And we've moved into a very modern version of that. And we really know how to manipulate resources, manipulate the environment to really create survival. And that's very leftness, that's very strategic, that's very seven-centered. We're carrying that all through. And we've really laid the landscape to provide an environment in which raves can be supported, even if they can't be their kind of individual expression. There's a lot of this kind of rightness, this movement to rightness is very much rave, this passive, receptive vehicle and awareness. Now, again, another caution here. This does not mean that quad right humans have anything to do with raves. They're a human expression of rightness that's coming through naturally through this evolutionary process. But a quad right human does not equal rave. It does not make them similar to raves or anything like that. They're a human version of rightness. He described them as essentially what we would identify as severely handicapped in our sense of what that means. Now, you have to forgive Ra for his perhaps slightly outdated terminology in that regard, but that is a descriptor that he used. Interestingly, there will still be a sacral dominance in the population. This kind of 67% of sacral beings populating the planet, it will still be maintained through the raves, the Ras, the raves. So it's quite interesting, but of course it's going to be mutated, and that mutation is impacted from the mutation in the solar plexus system through the channel 659, and I'll go into that, I think maybe in the next slide, or maybe not. So the rave is from Ra's description. All of this is from Ra's description, but I'm going to keep saying that. They're a battery for the conscious penta. And he mentioned the Matrix films, and we can all relate. We are all well aware of the Matrix films and this concept of humans being used as biological batteries to power a program, the Matrix. Well, this is actually, is it science fiction or real? We'll find out. So this idea that raves will be a battery for conscious penta. And I'll get into conscious penta shortly. A rave is unplugged when they are alone. They are not here to exist as individuals. They will have no purpose and power as individuals. It's when they are plugged in to form a conscious penta that will be the driving mechanism. They are completely stripped of them. They will be completely stripped of the mechanics to run an individual life, as I've already said. It's a really interesting thing around how this bioform, their bioform, is going to be fueled. And it's going to be very, very different to this human vehicle. In many cases, human bioform is very, very vulnerable. You know, we're quite easy to kill. We are very reliant on high caloric load, and without those resources of food, we would die out very rapidly. Interestingly, raves are not going to have those sorts of requirements. And this kind of fits in with this low developed musculature, low mobility. You know, these are going to be very sedentary in a physical sense vehicles, but there's going to be a lot going on that we cannot even begin to comprehend. So energy efficiency, they're going to be very low calorie, high yield. And digestion wise, Ra really pointed us towards the fifth tone, which is feeling. And this is this capacity that the vehicle can have to take in from the environment, and this idea of material energy being used and transformed from the environment. They will not be dependent on food resources for survival. This raises not just eyebrows, but lots of questions, because this is huge for us. Like, we are so dependent on food resources and food security for our ongoing survival. And it's really how our population has boomed to the extent that it has, thank you to the Industrial Revolution, factory farming, and all of that system, which is also a product of the cross of planning. So the story is so rich. This equals that creates this. It's all there in this in the human design system, and it's really quite exciting, I feel. So this idea of food and food security, evolution of food for survival, this is all about the channel 1949. It is a deeply primitive tribal channel, and it does relate to this idea of food as a bargaining tool, as a you fit with the tribe and you'll be looked after. Very cross of planning, you know, it's kind of moved in that direction. But this is all about that aspect, that really deep primitive aspect within us. It's not going to be needed for the rave, and that's probably why it's getting switched off. So Ra sort of said very, very dramatically that raves will abandon the food chain. Now that creates a lot of chill, as he describes, because if they become the overarching consciousness through conscious penta and they are kind of running the show, and yes, we're kind of creating an environment to support that, then we get into a space of deep vulnerability as a bioform if they don't have a requirement for food as a resource and they're running the show. Who knows? We don't know if it's going to go there. We don't know, but it's all possibilities at this stage. So this is all driven by the collapse of the 1949. So there'll be no tribal survival drive related to food resources, and raves are unlikely to be dependent on food resources for their survival. Okay, let's get into this conscious penta. So 3 raves form a conscious penta. That's why I've got this fun illustration here, because, you know, you put 2 raves next to each other, nothing's going to happen. You put a third one in, suddenly bang, like the lights are on. And this is conscious penta. Now, we already have examples of penta as far as a major driving force, and that is in the form of, you know, families, the family unit. You think about a father, mother, and a child. You know, they become a conditioning entity as a family unit. You know, pentas are any kind of organizational structures, but the rave will plug in and create these differentiated conscious pentas. And the conscious penta is purely strategic. So this is interesting. If they're going to need a degree of strategy to support them, individually they don't have it. But when they're plugged in together, watch out. They are pure strategic. We're not. That's the shift from leftness to rightness. We have got all of this in between now as humans. It's this purely strategic, this idea of the quad left. We have so much variation within that through variable. That's the way it's kind of been described in the mechanics. But the conscious penta will be purely strategic, not human. Again, Ra said so many times, this is all not human. Penta is the most homogenizing conscious forms that exist. I've already given some examples. And it's interesting because in human design, all of the work that Ra brought forward was to move us away from homogenization, from this collective programming, so that we could stand in our uniqueness. We could have our own unique inner authority that helps us navigate our lives rather than sitting back and taking on the outer authority of others, which was all very much cross of planning and seven-centered way of being. And this aspect, the penta, has got this homogenizing force. So there's going to be this control element that the raves require anyway, because they've got no individuality. The conscious penta is the program laying out its foundations for its next steps. So the next real awareness is the conscious penta. It's going to supersede us. It will have differentiation, conscious penta, not its individual members. It doesn't care about its individual members. Conscious pentas will inherit the earth. This is another quote from Ra. So what are we to do? We're going to get there. So raves won't be threatening to not self humans. Penta will be. This is a little bit of a concept to get your head around. Raves are going to have a profound vulnerability to us in the beginning as they are coming into being. And I'll get onto this in a couple of slides. So that's in a way going to protect them a little bit. As they come in to the world, we're going to be very, very confused about what's going on. There's going to be a degree of possibly panic and confusion about what these beings are that are being birthed through human, that aren't human. But once we get through that era, which is really hard to even predict how that is going to look, and yeah, we don't know. We're going to see it play out. Many of us or our children are. After that, the raves are going to be protected in a sense because they're actually not going to be threatening at all to us. They're not going to be interested in us. They're not about us. They are about essentially nothing until they're connected in conscious penta. When you get three of them together, connected, then the game is on, the machine is on, the awareness is on. So that penta, that conscious penta, that strategic capacity is going to be more powerful than our individuality as humans. But the raves themselves individually will seem completely not threatening. They will be physically inferior to us, to our eyes, and to what we understand that all means. The penta is conscious penta will inherit the earth. That's the one to watch. So we're going to have to coexist. We're going to have to coexist. Oh, crazy times. What a time to be alive. I say that with a degree of humor because, I was listening this morning to the audio of Ra's voice talking about this, and he was basically saying, like, if we can really understand what the chances are of being alive at this time in our evolution, this piece of our evolutionary history is like a click of the fingers. It's so concentrated and unique and rapid and huge compared to, you know, so-called millions of years of not a whole lot going on. This is such a moment. This is such a moment to be witness to. So coexisting. Here's the important stuff. Humans born after 2003, these are humans that are around right now. At the time of this recording, it is May 2024, and these guys are already here and they are already fertile. They're already capable of producing offspring. That being said, we still need the mutation to move through 2027. So we will not see the first raves until the cross of planning ends post 2027 and we move into the sleeping phoenix. But anybody born post 2003 has the potential, are capable of producing rave offspring, rave children, if we can call them that. From the rave point of view, it is unclear how or if raves will reproduce, but they will have this sacral system, but it's going to be mutated. So we don't know. Ra said he has no idea because he doesn't. There's also going to be a mutation in our mutation, massive changes within our fertility. And he doesn't know how sexuality, he's only hypothesizing how sexuality will play out in the future and particularly in raves. So as I've just said, fertility will be declining, and we're seeing it already, guys. We are seeing it already. The rise of IVF, the fall in fertility, the fall in birth rates globally, particularly in the more developed nations, is significant. The 2027 mutation will affect gates 59 via gate 6. So once the solar plexus mutation gets switched on, it is being driven by gate 6 within the solar plexus. And gate 6 is a channel with gate 59 in the sacral center, which is all about our energy production and our fertility and our sexual drive. So there we go. There's going to be an impact and we can see it, and it's going to be pushed through with this mutation. So the rays will begin to appear after the cross of planning ends. And this is super interesting, really. And there's all of these things. It's like, well, that bit doesn't make sense and that bit doesn't make sense, but it's all going to make sense once we're witnessing it all. It's interesting because cross of planning, what we're in right now, what we're seeing crumbling is this organizational structure globally. You know, all of this infrastructure and organization that looks after people, this like social support. It's like the bargain, you know, don't worry, you'll be looked after. And that's all going to fall away. It's crumbling now. And so right now, we probably have the best institutional support to handle what the rave is going to be presenting us with. These very, very unusual births, these beings that look like they need to be institutionalized, that we don't understand, that seem very severely handicapped, as Ra has put it, or just very, very impaired compared to what we would term as a healthy human. So all of those structures and support systems that we have in our society that we're all very proud of, interestingly, are going to be crumbling and falling away, maybe to evolve into something else, but they are not going to be there in the way that we experience them now. There is also no natural relationship possible between humans and raves. I think I've popped this quote in another slide, but, you know, Ra was very clear in saying, you know, quad rights, don't think you've got anything to do with the raves. You don't be romanticizing the raves. They are a different species. And the best example of this actually is what we've already seen before, which is this coexistence between Neanderthal and Homo sapiens. We were different species. Neanderthal didn't birth Homo sapien. As far as we know, they are completely distinct species. And we're going to see this come around again with Homo sapiens and Raves. So, what does it all mean? The next 1300 years. Why am I saying 1300 years? Because that's essentially where Ra has described as probably being the end of human. We will no longer, we'll reach the end of our process. We would have gone as far as we are here to go. And what a ride it's been. What a ride it has been. And so it feels like a long way away, but as he says, in evolutionary terms, it is tomorrow. So it's very, very soon. There's the quote, don't romanticize the rave. They will not be interested in us. They will not be a threat to us, but conscious penta could be. Humans will remain humans. The early raves are likely to be born in low resource countries and killed soon after birth or institutionalized. This is something that Ra has said that he predicts. So we will see if that is how it all plays out. So it's kind of like we won't even really recognize what's going on at first from a global standpoint, because in some of these countries now, you know, we're still living in a world where female babies are killed at birth. There is certain countries that is still going on in 2024. So it's not a far reach to imagine these very unhuman-like beings being born and people just going, whoa, we don't know what to do with that, and let's just dispose of that, whatever that was. There will be a bit of that going on. You know, we are still humans after all, especially once the cross of planning is the background frequency shifts and we're all about the individual. It's going to be very interesting to see how all of that is driven with our warm and fuzziness and how much of that is going to remain, particularly with raves. Ra describes it as, you know, it's going to be very traumatic for parents that produce raves because it's going to be very confusing to even understand what's going on. And you have all of this hope and dream of this baby that you're bringing into the world that is, you know, expression of the mother and the father, or the mother and the mother, or the father and the father. We have to keep this really broad because that's the world that we live in now and the reality. But, you know, no matter what gender the parents are, this child holds so much hope and expectation. You know, we can never get away from that. So the deep trauma and disappointment of producing something that is never going to fulfill any form of humanness is going to be a reality for rave parents. We are the end of the human lineage. We are it. We get to express the ultimate of what the human is capable of. You know, everything that we've been driving towards as far as knowing ourselves, knowing the universe, knowing what it's all about, this is our time. And the beautiful sense that I get from human design is we're going to arrive at a moment where it's like, it doesn't even matter. Our purpose here is to live fully as ourselves, navigating with our inner authority, and maybe arriving at a unique self-reflected consciousness that gets to be expressed in the world. But this is our opportunity, and it's not going to be recognized by most of us, unfortunately. Evolution has moved beyond us. We've had our time. We've had great glory in our time, and all good things come to an end. But the important thing and the beautiful message to really take away from this is that we get to be a conscious participant in evolution for the first time. What human design provides us with is information, the information we've been asking for. And ironically, most people are unable to receive it. And yet it provides an opportunity if you delve into this knowledge, if you allow yourself to put the programmed mind aside a little bit and receive this transmission through your vehicle. The vehicle knows. The vehicle knows. When the mind gets out of the way, the vehicle knows. And we just get to watch the movie unfold. And as Ra has said, just make sure that you get the best seat possible. That's all we're here to do. Like, what a weight lifted off us as humans, all of this burden, that generator burden of building, 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 it's not about that anymore. That era is over, and we just get to be witness to the remaining time that we have and live the most beautiful expression fully of humanness, hopefully the highest expression of that rather than the lowest. But that's it. I hope I managed to end on a more positive note and a bit of a hope for the future. I mean, for me, as I've digested this information slowly, bit by bit over time, and it's landed more and more, the message for me, which has touched me the most, is full permission to live the full emotional expression as humans. And for an emotional authority, that's a beautiful permission to have granted when so many of us have been conditioned to suppress our emotional expression. And we're the last ones that are going to have it as humans. So it's a beautiful permission slip to really fully express that, and the art in life that can bring, and the beauty and the awe and the creativity and all of that. It is truly a gift to be human at this time. So the final installment in the Matriarchs of Design series will be yin and form principle. That yes, the future is yin. We're going back to the beginnings, the mother, the feminine, and really unifying those aspects. And so the future is female. This is not really about gender. This is about masculine, feminine energy and polarity. And this is a really interesting topic as well, that felt like it belongs in Matriarchs of Design. What better place to end than with yin form principle and the feminine? We're going to be diving into Pluto, which has, I'm just trying to think where we're at. I mean, Pluto has entered Aquarius. This is really a whole new era. It's currently just retrograded back into Capricorn at this time, but it's going to be moving back out of its retrograde, and it's going to be in Aquarius, and this is what's driving us towards 2027. So yeah, here we go. I hope to see you in the next masterclass, the final one in the Matriarchs of Design. If not, thank you for being here, and I hope that you've gained something out of this presentation, and something positive, not nightmares, but just some hints to the future of what may be awaiting us. A lot of this is prophecy or prediction or hypothesis to the lesser extent. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this has been of value. Ciao.